Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kat and this is Catadactyl. So today I am doing my July wrap-up part 1. I can't believe half of July is already gone. That's insane. Is that not insane? Like, I feel like it was just 4th of July the other day. But it's actually not that insane because it is hot as all get out right now. It is so hot. Yes, so I'm gonna go ahead and try and keep this wrap-up short because otherwise I might just melt into a puddle. So I have read 8 books so far this month, and I am pleasantly surprised because a lot of them are bigger, and the 9th book that I'm currently in the middle of is so long that it's kind of a struggle bus, but it's really good, so I'll get to that later. Anyway, let's get started. So the first book I read was Lifelike by Kristoff. If you have seen any of my other videos recently, I was so hyped up to read this book. I couldn't wait to get my hands on it. We follow Eve, who is a girl who builds robots in kind of a post-apocalyptic world. She is fighting her robot one day when things don't go as planned, and people are after her, possibly for a skill, possibly to get money, and as she's running away from them, she also finds a discarded AI in the trash, and he is joined to the band, as well as her best friend Lemon Fresh, and then also a tiny robot that follows her around as well, and also her enigmatic, mysterious grandfather. And this was kind of just a journey of a book. So the plot was very all over the place. I felt like in some settings we spent so long, and in other settings, and other scenes were really short, and we didn't have that much time with the certain characters in those scenes, as well as some of the dialogue I thought was really repetitious. So there was a certain joke about the small robot having metal parts, like nether regions. I think that joke was made at least 5 or 6 times throughout the novel. But like the first 1 or 2 times I was like, haha, that's funny, and then after that I was like, okay, that's enough, like, let's stop. And a lot of the twists that I saw coming, I feel like are due to this being for a younger audience. I feel like if I was younger, I probably maybe wouldn't have seen it coming. However, the massive twist in the end came out of nowhere. And like, it's not that it came out of nowhere in a bad way where there wasn't breadcrumbing along the way. It came out of nowhere and I was like, oh my god. But it is that same twist that left me feeling unsure about how I felt about the end of the novel. I will definitely be reading the second one whenever it comes out. I gave it 4 stars, so I did enjoy it. It had a lot of problems, and I'm not sure how I feel about the ending, but I did really enjoy it. Like, there were just so many elements in there that I was like, yes, this is great. So it's actually my first Kristoff as well, so I think I might give more of his a try. Yeah, definitely not the end. So, good book to start off the month with. So, the next book I read was a romance called Saving Him, which is the second in the Keep Me series by Snyder. So in the first one, a man who only sleeps with virgins hires a girl, and when she arrives on his private island, he realizes that she has actually been put there against her will, and that she wasn't involved in this process or this deal at all, and so he decides to protect her and keep her. And in the second book, things escalate and go beyond that. Obviously I can't talk about the second book because it would ruin the ending of the first book, but if you like contemporary romance, then I really do think that this is a really good one. I read this with my sister and it was just like candy. Like, you can't even stop yourself. It is just so good. So I really do recommend it, and yeah, let's move on. So the one I read after that is also a romance. I keep seeing the Kiss Quotient around, and for some reason the cover reminds me of The Hating Game by Sally Thorne, which I read last month. And Sally Thorne's book was great, so for some reason Helen Hoang's The Kiss Quotient just like caught my attention. So we follow Stella, who creates algorithms for economic systems, and she is on the autism spectrum dealing with Asperger's, and she wants to be able to find romance and love and be able to experience closeness with another person, yet she feels like different aspects of her condition keep her from that. So in order to overcome her kind of ways of doing things, she decides to hire Michael, who is a male escort. So the things that I loved about this book were that Stella is an own voices representation, and I have almost, I don't think, ever read an Asperger's rep in any book, ever, I think. And Michael's family, him and his entire family is all POC rep, and beyond that, their chemistry together is so good, and I love the different aspects of each of their family styles and how they act together. And overall, I gave it 4 stars. It is just so cute, and it was such a great read. And not to mention, it's really sexy, but in the way that, like, the build-up is sexy, if you get what I mean. It's not one of the books where they're just, like, banging all over the place. It's more just, like, the build-up and the sexual tension between them over time, through time together, makes it so good in the end, if that makes sense. So, highly recommend. So, after that, I tackled Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. This has been on my shelf forever because it's massive and it was intimidating me, and I finally decided this is the month, Strange the Dreamer, this is the time. So I did read this and I gave it 4 stars. I found it to be really imaginative. So in the beginning, we're following Laszlo Strange, who was abandoned as a child, and he's raised by monks, and then he becomes a librarian, and he's obsessed with the lost city of Weep, which is kind of like a mystical city that he pieces together the history of, slowly reading a lot of documents and basically just being like the best librarian. And then something happens and he has a chance to go to Weep, and things go from there. The majority of the novel was so imaginative and the pacing was really good. And then towards the end, there's a little bit of insta-love, and like, you can fight me on it if you want, but for me, I like to see more development between characters before they're like, I will die for you. That specific element ruined kind of the end for me. Not to mention, holy F, is this a cliffhanger book? Like, I don't think people ever mentioned that like, this is essentially half of a story. It's not even like the whole story is completed and then like there could be another story. It's like, you know how if you're charting like a story, like beginning, climax, end, it's pretty much like right about at the top. It's not even complete in my opinion. So this should be like Strange the Dreamer Part 1, and then Muse of Nightmare should be like Part 2 instead. Anyway, but I get it, because if they had made it, this is alone is 530 pages, so if they had doubled it, it would be over 1,000 pages. So I understand why they split it, but like, yeah. I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it, if that makes sense. So after that, I read Hallucinations, a nonfiction work by Oliver Sacks. Oliver Sacks studies the way in which hallucinations come to people who are not insane. He charts the ways in which different things can cause different sorts of hallucinations. And for me, some of the fascinating parts were seeing just what people were seeing, if that makes sense. Like, my favorite one was an elderly lady that hallucinates a gentleman caller, and he comes every night, and he comes bearing gifts and sexual pleasure. And I was like, I mean, wouldn't we all like to be her when we're older? Because it's a hallucination, so the hallmark of a hallucination is that you are aware that it is not real. So she knows it's not real, but like, it's still like epically awesome to have that happen. If you're into science behind hallucinations or what can bring about altered states of consciousness, check it out. It was pretty cool, and it was a great discussion. This was Hiroshima's book club pick, and it actually led to some really interesting discussions. So after that nonfiction, I really wanted something to pull me out of a book slump, so I read romance, surprise, surprise, and I was actually looking to read something that was lesbian, or at least bisexual leaning to lesbian, because I have only been reading straight and gay romance for like the entirety of the year. I find it really hard to find a lesbian romance that I find interesting or that is well written. So I went to Nicole's channel, Wolves of the Soul, and she does a lot of queer recommendations, especially lesbian recommendations, and so I chose a book from one of her lists, and it's called The Brutal Truth by Lee Winter. This is essentially a Devil Wears Prada type story where there is a cool and calculating head of fashion, head of the magazine business conglomerate, and she has a secretary who is kind of bumbling, kind of obviously not on the same level. So it's kind of as if the Miranda character and the Anne Hathaway character got together in Devil Wears Prada, and it was great. It's probably the most well-written lesbian romance I have ever read. This one is purely romance, and it is so, so good. I really do recommend it if you're looking for lesbian romance, but do be forewarned, it is not smutty. It's definitely romance. So if you're looking for like the cathartic release in like a smut book that has a lot of sex scenes, this is probably not that one. There's a lot of sexual tension, and it's really drawn out for a long time. The book itself is over 300 pages, so it's definitely a slow romantic burn, but lesbian rep was great. So after that, I felt like pulling a book from up on my unread shelf, and it ended up being Invisibility by Andrea, Cremer, and David Levithan. This is a YA that is focused on Stephen and Elizabeth. So Stephen is invisible. So he has a curse on him that prevents anyone from seeing him. He's still fully there. He can pick things up, he can wear clothes, he can go out, but just people can't see him. Until Elizabeth moves in to his apartment building, and for some reason, she can see him. So at first it starts out like a romance, and then it becomes kind of a let's solve the curse mystery thriller action type thing. Yeah. Which is where I believe it fell apart for me. So I give this, I'm torn between 2.5 or 3 stars, because things that happened in the plot were just honestly like really messy, and I don't understand why. So yeah, I finished it yesterday, and I think I'm still like tasting how I feel about it, if that makes sense. Like I'm still mulling over it. I definitely will give them another read if I come across either of these authors, but this book was not so good. Like I don't totally recommend it, which is a shame because the initial idea and like the first half of the novel was freaking brilliant. Because just the idea of like struggling to be invisible and live a normal life is something that was really something I've never seen before. So I'm a bit disappointed by this one. And the last book that I have finished so far this month is Beat Poets, an Everyman Library Pocket Poets book. So I really love this. It's black and it has gold detailing. I always have pretty bad luck with poetry. The one area of poetry that I really do like is beat poetry. So that's the 1950s in America. Specifically West Coast America, usually. This indeed has some of my favorite poems in it, as well as some new ones. And whenever I read poetry, I always do underline the lines that I like. So I'm sure, like, if you guys are aware of beat poetry at all, you would know, for instance, Howl by Allen Ginsberg starts with, I saw the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness, starving, hysterical, naked, dragging themselves through the Negro streets at dawn, looking for an angry fix. Angel-headed hipsters, burning for the ancient heavenly connection to the starry dynamo in the machinery of night. That's just the first, like, 6 lines. I love that poem. It's probably my favorite poem of all time, as well as there were so many new ones that I didn't know, such as Enlightenment Poem by Lenore Kendall. I'm just going to read a few lines. We have all been brothers, hermaphroditic as oysters, bestowing our pearls carelessly. No one yet had invented ownership, nor guilt, nor time. We watched the seasons pass. We were as crystalline as snow, and melted gently into newer forms, as stars spun round our heads. It's just the beginning. It's so good. Obviously beat poetry isn't for everyone. Sometimes the form is quite lucid, sometimes it's more put together, sometimes there's no punctuation, sometimes there is. It's just a completely different style, and I tend to enjoy poems that are more beautiful with their word choice than others. And I'm gonna read one more. So this is Sex Like Desire by Leroy Jones. So this is the last stanza. What is there? Where is it? Who is she? What can I give myself, trade myself, to make me understand myself? Nothing is ever finished, nothing past. Each act of my life with me now till death. Themselves the reasons for it. They are stones in my mouth and ears, whole forests on my shoulders. Isn't it just so good? Yeah, so I give this collection 4.5 stars overall, but then again, I knew I was gonna really like it because I love beat poetry. If any of you have any poetry recommendations that you think are similar to beat poets, please do send them my way. I have like really bad luck picking out poetry for myself unless it's beat poetry. So yeah, please do let me know. So that finished up the 8 books that I have finished, and I just wanted to mention the one book that I am chugging along. And so this is the book. It is Kushiel's So this is Kushiel's Dart by Jacqueline Carey, and it is just an erotic political assassin thriller. And this first book is over 900 pages. And I have 350 pages more to go. It seems like whenever I pick this book up, I lose about 5 hours of any day. So this is like a heroine book where like I just can't. So whenever I need to get work done, I just do not touch this book. I just let it sit there and stare at me because I can't. So the last 2 days, for instance, I had to read a 400-page Western, which I am critiquing for my freelance editing job, and I was like, if I pick this book up, there is no chance that I'm going to read this Western right now, because it's like, this is just sucks you in, and wow, like wow. So I can't wait to talk about this more in probably by the end of the month. Like I said, I have 350 pages left, and unfortunately, or fortunately, I have the next book up on that shelf, and it is also freaking massive, so we shall see. Maybe it will be a weekend treat where I can read it on the weekend if I get all my work done. Yeah. So if you guys like this wrap up, give me a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, that would be awesome. Also, if you guys have any recommendations for me, that'd be great, or any comments about what I read, that would also be awesome. I hope you guys are having a fabulous day, and I will chat to you later. Toodles!